Hi everybody, so today we're going to be looking at how blood flows through our heart. So as you can see behind me, I drew a picture of the heart. This is for educational purposes. The heart is not really round. If you look on the right hand side, I have this written in blue. That's because the right side of your heart has blood that doesn't have oxygen. The left hand side of your heart does have oxygenated blood. Now one quick thing is, if, like I said, this is the right hand side because it's the right side of my body. My right arm is to my right, even though it might be to your left. And so this is the left side of your heart. So let's take a look at this real quick. And blood is going to enter into the heart through or into my right atrium. So the top part of the heart is called the atrium. Combined, these are called atria. And we're going to get to this one in just a minute. So my blood's going to come into my right atrium. Now you'll notice that we have a line that's drawn right here. And what this line is, it represents a valve. And what valves will do is when the heart beats, the valves open up and the blood can go from the right atrium down to this lower part. This valve has actually three different names. So we call it the tricuspid valve. All right, so we can call it the tricuspid valve. And the reason they call it the tricuspid valve is it has like three cusps in there. It looks kind of like that. And so this would open up and blood would go through there. We can also call it the right atrioventricular valve. All right, and it's also known as, more simply, the right AV valve, which is just abbreviated atrioventricular. So these are going to open up. Okay, it doesn't really flap like this, but this is going to open up and blood's going to come down into this part here. This is called my right ventricle. Now, when the bottom of the heart goes to beat, what will happen is these valves will close. So the blood's going to go from the right atrium into the right ventricle. When the bottom of the heart beats, basically what's going to happen is, this is known as my pulmonary valve right here. And pulmonary means lung. So blood is going to go from my right ventricle through this pulmonary valve, and it's going to enter into something called either the pulmonary artery or the pulmonary trunk. So I'm going to call this the pulmonary trunk. All right, so this is going to be my pulmonary trunk. And then what's going to happen now, and by the way, the pulmonary trunk is on the outside. The valve here is basically on the inside of the heart, but then once it enters into the pulmonary trunk, it leaves the heart. It's going to get to the pulmonary trunk, and then it's going to go up and into the left pulmonary artery or the right pulmonary artery. Now, if you notice, I have these written in blue. The pulmonary artery is the only artery in the body that has deoxygenated blood. So these are going to go out to the lungs. They're going to get oxygen, and then what's going to happen is the blood's going to come back to the heart. Okay, and it's going to come back and it's going to enter into the heart through the pulmonary vein. Now, like we said, the pulmonary artery is the only artery in the body that does not have oxygenated blood. The pulmonary vein is the only vein in the body that does have oxygenated blood. That's why I wrote it in red. So now the blood's going to come in here, and it's going to come into our left atrium. Okay, remember, this was my right atrium, this was my left atrium. And then, once again, right here, we have another valve. This valve actually has four different names. So it's known as the mitral valve. It's known as the bicuspid valve. It's known as the left atrioventricular valve. And it's also known as the left AV valve. So just like on the right-hand side, we have the A and the V from atrioventricular, okay? So it's known as the left atrioventricular valve. Now, once again, when the top of the heart beats, these valves open up, right? And by the way, the reason it's called the bicuspid valve is because unlike our tricuspid valve, in which we have 3 cusps, this only has 2 cusps. So what's going to happen is when the top of the heart beats, the blood now is going to come down into the left ventricle. So this is my left ventricle down in here. All right? And then once the bottom of the heart beats again, this is going to close up. These valves will close up. But now what the left ventricle is going to do is the left ventricle is going to pump blood out to the body. And I'm just going to go back 1 second here because just to reiterate, this is going to the lungs, this is going to the body. So to go to the body, it has to leave, it leaves the heart, it leaves the left ventricle, going past the aortic valve. So this is going to be my aortic valve right here. And it's going to enter into the aorta. Okay, so it's going to enter into the aorta, and the aorta is going to leave the heart, and it's going to go up and come back around and go behind my pulmonary arteries. And then the aorta is actually going to have some branches coming off, which we'll cover this in a different video. So this is the aorta right here. This part is actually called the ascending aorta. This is known as the arch of the aorta. And then we have the descending aorta. So I'm just going to write aorta down in here. Okay, so we can see that's the aortic valve that's going to be right there. And then my aorta is basically going to be this blood vessel that goes this way. So once again, just to reiterate, blood is going to come in through the right atrium, comes into the right atrium. It's going to go past the tricuspid valve, also known as the AV valve, or the atrioventricular valve, go into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, the bottom of the heart, when it contracts, it's going to go past the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary trunk. The pulmonary trunk is going to split into my right and left pulmonary arteries, and that's going to go out to the lungs. It's going to get oxygenated. That oxygenated blood is going to come back through the pulmonary vein. From the pulmonary vein, it's going to go into the left atrium. From the left atrium, it's going to go into the left ventricle. And then when the bottom of the heart contracts, it's going to go past the aortic valve and into the aorta. And just in case I forgot, this valve, when it goes from the left atrium into the left ventricle, it goes past the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve, or the left atrioventricular valve, or the left AV valve. So really quick, that's a breakdown of how blood passes through the heart. Thanks so much for watching.